We will see coagulation of blood now. You must have observed that whenever there is an injury or a small cut on your body, supposedly skin gets bruised and blood comes out, it coagulates after some time. That means the blood flow is not incessant, it stops. There is a brownish clot-like substance. Everybody is aware of that, what that clot is. But what is the mechanism behind formation of that clot? We are going to understand that. So basically that brownish substance that is formed over the cut, that stays for 1 or 2 days on your skin, on the external surface, that is a clot which is formed by a fibrous protein which forms a fibrous meshwork, and inside which there is presence of RBCs which have come out. So supposedly you have an injury, what would happen is that the blood vessels would be ruptured from over there. Now the blood vessels which would be ruptured, they would act as an injured tissue. So there are many steps which are involved in the coagulation of blood. So because we deal with blood more importantly, we have to see that what are the proteinaceous constituents of the blood that undergo that clotting process basically. So first of all, you encounter an injury, supposedly you get a cut on your skin. So what happens is the blood vessels which are carrying the blood, they contract a bit so that the blood flow reduces. First and the foremost step that body takes is by the blood vessels themselves, not the fluid connective tissue, but the blood vessels in which the blood is flowing, they get little bit contracted so that the blood flow could be ceased and the loss of blood could be ceased. That is the first step. Second step is to be taken by blood itself. Now our blood is divided into 3 main constituents, or 2 I would say rather. First one is plasma and the second one is the formed elements that comprises of the cells basically. Now the plasma is the fluid matrix, and we know that inside plasma there are many proteins which are present. So the first thing that you have to remember is that this is the plasma protein that would form the meshwork, and that meshwork would form that brownish clot that forms over the cut. That is fibrinogen, and it is present in the blood plasma itself. Second thing you have to remember that for the process of clotting, platelets play a very important role. You might have heard that people who suffer from dengue disease that is caused by a bite of a mosquito, they have a very low count of platelets, and that causes their death because in somehow there is hemorrhage inside the body and clotting is not clotting does not take place. So platelets are very much important, all right. So the other name for the platelets, if you might recall, is thrombocytes. Cytes represent cells, the cells of the blood which produce something related to thrombin or thrombo. Some thrombo word would be there, that is, as you can see over here, there is word thrombo, there is thrombo, there is thrombin. There is a lot of thrombo work going on, as you can see. That is why we name platelets as thrombocytes, because basically thrombin is a protein which is responsible for the polymerization of a plasma protein which forms a fibrous meshwork, and that forms the clot. That might have gone quite over the top. Come back to the topic where we were, that the 2 parts of the blood coagulation. First one was carried out by the blood vessels. Second is to be carried out by the blood itself. Now the blood is divided into 3 components. First is 2 components rather. First is the plasma and second is the formed elements. In formed elements we have platelets which are going to play an important role in blood coagulation. Both plasma and the formed elements, out of which platelets would be responsible for releasing a cascade of proteins or enzymes. When I say cascade of proteins, that means few enzymes would come, they would lead to formation of next substance, then the next substance would lead to formation of next, and there would be a cascade. It is like a waterfall of enzymes would come, one by one they would work and a clot would be formed. Now let us see the 3 steps which are involved in the coagulation of blood that blood undertakes. First thing is that the platelets inside the blood, they release platelet factor 3. The platelets release the platelet factor 3 on seeing an injury in the blood vessels, and the injured tissue which has seen the injury, which has been damaged, a cut or a bruise has taken place, there is thromboplastin is a protein again that is released by the injured tissue itself. The injured tissue releases thromboplastin, and the platelets in the blood, they release platelet factor 3. Now calcium ions come and combine with both of these, and convert this thromboplastin in the presence of platelet factor 3 to prothrombinase. Another name for this is thrombokinase. Alright, now this formation of prothrombinase is very crucial because it would lead to the formation of thrombin. Thrombin is again an enzymatic protein which leads to the polymerization of fibrinogen. That is part of third step. Coming to the second step, this prothrombinase which is being formed, it converts prothrombin. Now prothrombin is formed inside the liver cells. It is present in the blood and it is very important for the clotting process. And vitamin K, you have to remember, vitamin K plays an important role in synthesis of prothrombin inside the liver. Now this prothrombin comes, and in the presence of prothrombinase, it forms thrombin. Now this formation of thrombin leads to the next step, that is the step number 3, where the polymerization of plasma protein fibrinogen would take place and fibrin would be formed. Now what is a clot basically? Clot is fibrin film protein is present like this, and in between we have RBCs, WBCs, in which are entangled in this meshwork, and that hard substance stops the oozing out of the blood. This is basically a clot. So this black wires which I have shown over here, they are fibrin, and inside which we have RBCs which were oozing out of the damaged blood vessel. So the fibrinogen that is formed, that gets converted to fibrin. Fibrinogen is already present, not formed. It is already present in the plasma. It gets converted to fibrin in the presence of thrombin that was formed from prothrombin, that got converted to thrombin in the presence of thrombokinase, and this thrombokinase was formed as a result of interaction of platelet factor 3 and thromboplastin in the presence of calcium. When this fibrin is formed as a result of all these steps, it combines with RBCs and WBCs which are coming out of the damaged blood vessel, and it forms a clot. So this is all about coagulation of blood. It is a sort of a mechanism, like you see curdling of milk take place. Milk is a fluid and then it forms the curd, which is a semi-solid substance. Same way, there is a semi-solid substance formation which takes place by this mechanism that can be studied in 3 steps. So another thing that is to be remembered, apart from these names, all these names are very, very important. You have to remember each and every name. Apart from these names, what you have to remember is there are almost more than 12 factors. Their naming has been done. There is a cascade of proteins, as I told you, the most important ones being these. So the first factor that we have is fibrinogen is the first factor. It is known as factor number 1. Prothrombin is known as factor number 2. Then thromboplastin is known as coagulating clotting factor number 3, and the calcium ions which play a very crucial role are known as factor number 4. So these are the 4 factors you have to remember. First one being fibrinogen, second is prothrombin, third is thromboplastin, and fourth is calcium. So you see how blood itself is playing an important role in its coagulation, so that blood loss does not take place, apart from the blood vessels which initially reduce their diameter so that less blood flow takes place. Then comes the factors which are very important, that are platelet factors. The thrombocytes bring those platelet factors, due to which formation of prothrombinase takes place, and hence the cascade of proteins begins. So this is all about coagulation of blood that is manifested in 3 steps. Step by step there is formation of fibrin that takes place, and this fibrin ultimately forms the clot. Now from that clot, at times when this entire RBC, WBC of the blood and fibrin have been entangled in the clot, there is a watery substance that oozes out, and that is known as serum. Now this serum simply is plasma, the plasma content which is not having its proteins, and apart from that the formed elements which are the cellular components of the blood, they are also not present. So this is the entire mechanism of blood coagulation that takes place whenever an injury is present or injury takes inside.